And good afternoon, folks, and welcome to this edition, this May 24th, 2011 edition of the Sonic Comic News. And I'll tell you, folks, a lot of news has come out this past week concerning the Sonic comic book. Let me explain. As we all know, throughout last week, and maybe even some of this week, we ended up receiving, if you're a subscriber like I am, you ended up receiving the 225th anniversary issue of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, throughout last week, and even continuing this week, a lot of people were kind of 50-50 on what we saw at the end. There were some, on one hand, that were happy about what they saw. There were some, on the other hand, that weren't. And there were some, like myself, that were neutral about it. And what I mean by neutral is people like me, you know, what we just say, whatever happens, it happens. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, apparently what happens is, from what a lot of people have described, although they're not 100% sure or accurate yet, and those that thought they were 100% sure are now kind of doubting it, and that is the fact that the character, Princess Sally Acorn, 3 issues removed from getting back together with Sonic, apparently got shot at and killed off. Now, not many people believe this to be true. Some do, some don't. And those that did are now, like I said, in the majority of not being 100% sure. One of them is XX Miko XX, who has an account here on YouTube. And they said that they weren't sure anymore, and basically that no one really believes now that Princess Sally Acorn is dead. No one believes that. It's kind of like it's kind of like how some feel about the whole Fantastic Four situation at the beginning of this year. Some are not totally sure that the Human Torch is dead, and they're just waiting for him to come back. Well, anyway, some have even come out and said that if she was being killed off, that the way she was killed off, if she is being killed off, that is a big if, because again, some think she is, some think she don't, I'm hoping not, and some are like me, neutral, and others are kind of like in the majority of, well, I'm not really sure now if that is the case. But the way many will agree, whether they like the character or not, and hoping she dies or not, the way they look at it is the possible attempt at it, or at least of putting her life in the balance, or on the line. The way that it was done, according to many, was very, very cheaply. They didn't like it. In fact, most people find that to be the worst case scenario to kill off a character. Due to the fact that the character is so popular and is basically and virtually an icon when it comes to this comic book, many feel that this would be a cheap way to kill her off. It's kind of like if you were to take an icon, one of the iconic characters out of, let's say, Spider-Man. Let's say you take Felicia, the Black Cat, and let's say, okay, we're going to kill Felicia off screen. We're going to have her run ahead like Sally did and boom, shoot her and she's dead. She's such an iconic figure, there's no way that would happen. It's also the same way let's say you did how do I put this? Because I know there have been some versions that have done it this way. But let's say you were to take the true iconic comic book version, the true original iconic version that's used in the original straightforward Superman comics of, let's say, Lois Lane. Now I'm not talking the spin-offs, I'm not talking about, you know, the tie-ins, the special issues and all that. I'm talking the straightforward Superman comics. If you were to take someone like Lois Lane, have her do what Sally did, and they get shot off screen, people would look at that as a cheap death, right? Okay. Let's take a look then. Here's another one. Here's a good example, folks. Here's a good news item on it. Let's take a look at Disney. Let's say Disney decided, okay, we're going to kill off Minnie Mouse. And we're going to do it just the way Sally apparently was killed off, or having her life hang in the balance. Let's say we have Minnie run off and bam bam, off screen. I mean, folks, come on. You see, what I'm trying to, come on folks, do you think Disney would do that? No. See, this is what a lot of people are angry about. This is why a lot of people feel that she's not really dead. And this is why some of those that thought she was dead are now kind of doubting it. Like XX Miko XX. You know, and there's some others that, you know, really don't carry the ray, like Red Menace 2. But right now, a lot of fans are kind of like unsure all around. But when you take a look at Genesis, a lot of people start to kind of get an idea that, okay, maybe she is alive, but what's going to occur afterwards? Because recently, Part 3's preview description said, old memories begin to resurface. There was one little line in there, old memories begin to resurface. And what this tells me, folks, what this tells me is, basically what this tells me is what Ian is doing is his own adaptation, folks, of what we've seen in DC Comics and Marvel Comics and other comic book companies' comic books or special comics, as well as on television and in the movies. You see, what it sounds like to me, because a lot of people thought about this before Genesis was even released, and a lot of people thought about this when the first preview for Part 1 came out. A lot of people started saying it sounds more like what Ian Flynn is doing is his own adaptation, his own version of DC Comics 0 Hour. And the reason I say this is because a lot of people point this out. They said it might be just like 0 Hour from DC Comics. Others said it could be like House of M. Now the reason people brought this up is because both sort of had a similarity. Characters basically went into another world, into another state of, into another world, if you will, and then started remembering, oh my gosh, this is not our world. Oh, this is another world. We need to get back to ours. So anyway, that's what it looks like to me when you read Part 3. And then again, it also reminds me of Back to the Future Part 2. Let me explain what I mean by Back to the Future Part 2, folks. Let me explain. Everybody knows that when Marty and Doc Brown went to 2015, Marty wanted to purchase this sports almanac which would give him all the results of all the games, from baseball to basketball to football to the horse races and all that. Give him the results right then and there, so that he would know ahead of time and he'd be able to make money off it, right? Well, what happened is after the doc threw the almanac in the trash, the old geezer Biff grabs it, takes it out of the trash, and then without Marty and Doc knowing it, steals the DeLorean to go back to 1955 and alter reality in his image. So I want you to think about that for a moment. What does that remind you of right now? Exactly. Exactly. That's what it feels like to me. It feels not just like 0 Hour in House of M, but it feels very much like a Back to the Future Part 2 deal. Because what happened? They go back to 1985, and it's not the 1985 they remember. Yeah, they remember everything. The only exception is they remember everything, but those involved in 1985 don't remember the past lives. But the Biff there kind of gets the idea that something remembers what he was told back 30 years before. So what happens, so what do they do to restore everything back to normal? They basically, folks, have to burn the almanac in 1955 and things return to normal. They have to go right to the prime source as to where reality was altered to change it back. So that reminds me of, in a way, of what's going on with Genesis. And I'm pretty sure anybody watching and listening would agree on that. But you know, folks, that's not the only news item coming out of. But you know, the Genesis and the preview for Part 3 and all that isn't the biggest. And you know, 225, the beginning of Genesis and the Part 3 description of Genesis aren't the only news items coming out this year. I mean, coming out this week here on Sunday Comic News. No, folks. You see, there's another news item that was tossed my way, courtesy of my fellow Sonic fan and friend, Tross. She kind of tossed something my way. And apparently Estero heard about this too. But it seems a report has come out. Apparently, rumors have been reported that Ian Flynn, these are just rumors that have been reported and been heard of by Tross and by Estro and maybe a few others, but the reports are, and these are rumors, these are just rumors right now, that Ian Flynn is getting death threats. I'm not kidding, folks. Ian Flynn is actually getting death threats from I guess, strong supporters of the comic book, and maybe strong supporters of certain characters, like say a certain princess. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that many fans, whether they like the character or not, would find it kind of cheaply for the character to die off the way they did, which makes everybody seriously doubt what's going on. But, according to the rumors that were tossed my way, it seems that Ian Flynn has basically backed himself into a corner to where now he's receiving death threats for what he did. Now, obviously, the first thing to do is to report this to the police. That would make the most obvious, that's the most obvious choice. Report it to the police, or do what he's done to me. And that's just ban the people off his form and say, look, I'm not going to have you on my form if you're going to threaten me. Now, again, we're not sure if the reports of these rumors are true. We're not really sure yet, folks. We're not really sure. But I will say this. I will say this. If they are true, then again, if I'm Ian Flynn, what I do is logically I report this to the police so they can track down whoever's giving me death threats. I would do that. But then again, if Ian doesn't do that, then Ian's gonna hopefully Ian's not gonna have to resort to this, because as a writer, as a comic book writer or a novel writer and all that, you got to be strong in what you do. You got to keep yourself strong to the point that you don't give away what's going to happen next. But but hopefully Ian can keep everything within and not let these death threats or whatever you call them get to him if the rumor about them are true. If the rumors about them are true. Now, if he does let them get to him, Ian's going to have two choices, obviously. He's going to have two choices, obviously, if he lets them get to him. Those choices are probably going to be, one, letting everybody know that no one's really dead and everybody's going to be okay. Or two, someone does die, but it's not who we think. But hopefully Ian's not going to have to resort to that, and he's just going to keep his cool and just wait it out until all the issues are released, and then explain his actions. That's what I would do. That's what I would do if I was him. I would explain my actions after everything is said and done. Whether I keep said character alive or not, I would explain my actions. But again, these are just rumors about these death threats. And again, I kind of find it a little ridiculous that fans would do this. It reminds me of last year. At the beginning of this year and last year, if you will. I don't know if it was the beginning of this year or last year, whatever. But it sort of reminds me of that whole Selena Gomez, Justin Bieber deal. When fans of Justin Bieber, obsessive fans of Justin Bieber, were sending Selena death threats to stay away from Justin. And I'm not just talking, just regular fans that want to see Justin stay single and all that. No, I'm talking obsessive fans, to the point that they're the kind of fans that would probably have, a saying of the next Miss Justin Bieber tattooed on their arm or on the back, or have a T-shirt saying that, saying I'm the next Miss Justin Bieber, or whatever you want to call it. Those are obsessive fans, and those are the kind that probably send the death threats. But again, I said this before and I'll say it again. They were probably just younger kids, 15, 14-year-old girls and all that wanted Justin to stay single. Because like I said in that video when I talked about it, I don't remember or recall the Backstreet Boys. I don't remember or recall the New Kids, NSYNC, or 98 Degrees. These girlfriends or wives getting death threats because they were around them. I don't remember that. I don't remember Britney getting death threats because she was once dating Justin. I mean, come on. It was ridiculous, folks. It's ridiculous. Just like this is. Just like this is. But again, hopefully, despite how you feel about Ian, he could try to not let this get to him and he just move on and do his work. But anyway, that apparently is what's going on with Ian Flynn. Apparently he's getting these death threats because of what he did. Now, also, speaking of Genesis, there seems to be a new news item that just broke today. Genesis is apparently going to be released in January as a 128-page hardcover edition. Kind of like how all these other comic books do these, these big, something page editions, like X-Men did War Song with Phoenix. Revelations was done with Spider-Man. Stuff like that. They're planning to gather Genesis together into one graphic store, into one story. So apparently, it looks like come January, if you want to just read the whole thing without bringing out your issues, there you go. Apparently that's a report, and apparently it's going to be reportedly sold, or starting its selling price will be around $16.50, apparently. But that's the news right there, that Genesis is going to probably be going in that direction because it's supposed to be so big. So, again, those are just the news items coming out of the Sonic Archie Comics Sonic Comic World this week. You know, preview part 3's preview and description said one of its things says old memories resurface. The fact that people, you know, Genesis and 225 have gotten people kind of riled up. They don't know what's really going on. Some are hoping this goes something this way. Some are hoping it doesn't. Some are unsure. Ian Flynn, rumors going around that Ian Flynn's possibly gotten death threats for what he's done. So, and then of course Genesis, like I just mentioned, being released as a 128-page graphic novel or comic book hardcover edition in January. So that's going to be something good. That might be a late Christmas present for yourselves and myself when it comes out. So, but that's all I'm going to say about it. And I thank you for watching this May 24th, 2011 edition of Sonic Comic News. Comment down below if you like, and I will talk to you all later. Peace.